And we have an update now on a story that we've been reporting on for years. Most New Yorkers depend on the subway as a lifeline to ride to work, school, and complete daily tasks. But in some parts of the city, disabled residents have limited or no access. And this afternoon, disability advocates will appear in court to argue that the MTA is legally obligated to make the entire subway system accessible to everyone. This is a fight that they have been waging for a long time. So we are bringing in an expert on this topic. We have Emily Seelenfreund, staff attorney and disability rights advocate. So first of all, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So the first thing we want to talk about is just accessibility. How important is this topic?
It's so important for the people who are impacted by it. There is a set of New Yorkers, hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers who cannot get around the city like everybody else. The subway is the way New Yorkers get around town. But for most New Yorkers who can't access over 3/4 of subway stations, it shapes every aspect of their life.
And you're mentioning just how difficult it is to get around. And so can you talk about that? What are those problems?
So, I mean, as you know, New Yorkers take the subway. This is not by and large a driving city. Everyone, the bus is great, but it's a little bit slower. And so, when you're thinking about what neighborhood to live in, over half of New York City neighborhoods are accessible transit deserts, which means you cannot live there if you need an elevator to access the system. It's every time you book a doctor's appointment, finding someone who's near an accessible subway. It's every time your friend invites you to go out for drinks after work. It's checking, does that bar have easy subway access? It shapes every aspect of your day.
And you have to pick and choose based on who has stairs, who has an elevator. So you've been directly impacted. Is there a story that you want to share of a specific incident that has really impacted you, or overall every single day, perhaps?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I moved a few months ago, and I was, looking for a neighborhood to live in. And, obviously I have everyday New Yorker concerns. This city is expensive. I want a, reliable commute to work. And I work, right out near the Grand Central Station, which is one of the, 10 busiest stations in the entire subway. They've shut down the 7 elevator for 9 months. You can imagine if you, relied on the 7 every day to get to work, not accessing for 9 months, you'd be rallying in the streets too. And that meant that all along the 7 line, I just couldn't look there, because if I couldn't use the closest subway station to my work for 9 months, it was just off the table for me.
And so the MTA is now spending some money to help remedy and rectify and make all kinds of improvements. And we do have a quote that I do want to read from the MTA. So that is that the MTA is committed to providing accessibility throughout the subway system. And they say, that is why we've allocated $5.5 billion to make an additional 70 stations fully accessible. And it goes on to say that we continue to pilot new technology and creative solutions that assist people with disabilities in navigating through stations. And lastly, beyond that, they say we have no comment on pending litigation. So what is your reaction to that?
So, my organization, Disability Rights Advocates, we're a legal nonprofit. We have 7 lawsuits against the MTA over the years for just blatantly ignoring the needs of riders with disabilities. They have a long history of this. And, we welcome continued spending on accessibility. We think it's about time. But at the end of the day, what the MTA needs to do is make a legally binding commitment to this and show that, they don't just think it's nice to, throw some money the way of people with disabilities, but it's legally required and legally binding. And that's what we're going to be fighting for in court today.
And that number, $5.5 billion, that they'll finally be spending, is that happening? Is that money in the pipeline, or is that still going to take some time to see?
Right now they've said it, and it's great and it's nice. But again, there's no court order by a judge saying that, this is legally required, and that money could change at any time. Congesting pricing could fall through. There could be, some leaks in the system. Like there's, many things, as that can go wrong on the subway. But the problem is that the MTA has continued to put the needs of riders with disabilities last. And it's about time that, we moved up in the rankings.
And then just lastly, what do you hope that lawsuit will accomplish?
We're hoping that, what we've been fighting for many years will come to fruition, which is that, a judge will say that New Yorkers with disabilities deserve equal access to the system on equal terms and conditions, and the MTA cannot ignore them any longer.
Well, thank you, Emily, so much for being here. This is a topic we're going to continue to follow. And right now we're going to head to a quick break, but we'll be right back right after this.